My question is relating to fox hunting and the way in which you can address the concerns of those residents who live close to fox hunting events regarding the encroachments into residential areas and the measures that are being taken to address this to date. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. As the Deputy will be aware, detailed debate was held around the issue of hunting during the passage of the Animal Health and Welfare Act 2013, and the Dáil voted overwhelmingly to allow the continuation of fox hunting in accordance with an appropriate code of conduct. The Animal Health and Welfare Act 2013 specifically prohibits the hunting of animals which have been released in an injured, mutilated or exhausted condition. Section 25 of the Animal Health and Welfare Act 2013 also allows for the establishment of codes of practice, for the adoption of codes published by other persons for the purpose of providing practical guidance relating to any aspect of the Act, including fox hunting. Voluntary codes of practice have been established by the Hunting Association of Ireland, which detail the conduct to be adhered to in respect of the hunting of foxes and the treatment of the animal during the hunt. The code prohibits the hunting of foxes where the animal is injured and advocates the humane disposal of a fox when captured. The code also takes into account local concerns and the concerns of the landowners on whose land hunting takes place. In light of the concerns raised by residents regarding encroachment into residential areas, officials of my department met with the Hunting Association of Ireland to discuss several such incidents. My officials underlined the need for those involved in hunting to take greater action to avoid such incidents. The Association committed to avoiding any reoccurrence of such incidents such as this. In light of this, it is noteworthy that there does not seem to have been any recent reports of such incidents in the media. The need to strengthen the existing code of practice in order to avoid such incidents where hounds entered housing estates was discussed. The Association undertook to review the existing code of practice. I am fully committed to promoting good practices that respect the welfare of animals, and my department devotes considerable resources to protecting animal welfare and in dealing with breaches of animal welfare legislation. Under the Act, on summary conviction, a person can receive a fine of up to €10,000 and on indictment €250,000 and/or imprisonment up to 5 years. There are fixed penalty payments for lesser offences. The Act provides a framework within which the welfare of animals can be safeguarded, and I am hopeful that the substantial and significantly increased levels of penalties for offences of animal cruelty provided for under the Act will act as a deterrent to animal welfare abuses.
Very much, and it's very much like a previous PQ reply that you gave me. I just make one point, is that the codes of practice for the Hunting Association are voluntary. So therefore they don't have to abide by them. So I understand that you're saying there the department has been in contact with the Hunting Association, who said that they would review and update this particular area, but we don't see any real changes to date. I accept what you say, we don't appear to have had any encroachment recently. The other aspect is that for them to hunt in an area, they rely on the express or implied permission to be on land. And again, I understand that you were going to approach them to remove that word implied, so that they will need express permission to be on somebody's land, because we do know that they are encroaching and they have encroached on lands where the owners didn't want the hunting. That's not to mention then the encroachment on housing estates, where you do know there was a dog killed by the hunt in a collision, and somebody's pet was also killed during the course of a hunt. I think the Act also prohibits the hunting of, as you said, animals released or injuries, mutilated or exhausted. But I mean, when the hunt comes out and the dogs are in a frenzy to get after the fox, they don't know if that fox has been injured or mutilated. So I just think it's a very, very loose kind of area. And when you talk about the fine, I mean, that one fine in Macroom, €1,000 between about more than 10 people, that was like a slap on the wrist.
I met one of one of my own constituents who had this experience, and I accept it was a very traumatic incident. And on foot of that, and indeed other incidents which had a media profile, and perhaps others that didn't have the same profile but occurred, we did undertake engagement with the Hunting Association to ensure that this never happened. And I'm satisfied from the engagement that there was a commitment that steps would be put in place in terms of their code of practice to ensure that compliance with their own code of practice would be important, and insofar as their code was omitting to make reference to issues around housing estates, that would be addressed. And My information is that, in fact, the written code hasn't changed yet, but that there has been a communication with hunts. And I will ask officials in my department to engage again with the view of expressly having the code updated to reflect the concerns that arose in those incidents.
It's far too loose, and I just want to bring up three other aspects. One is the dogs that are being used as well, and I don't think if there's any inspection at all of those dogs and the way in which they're being kept, and there certainly are alarming reports from people who are into animal welfare of these dogs and the conditions in which they're being kept. There was also a report from one of the groups of a particular huntsman or huntsperson who is exceeding the number of breeding bitches that are allowed in the Act, the Dog Breeding Establishment Act. And again, who's following up on this? And then another instance from the Cork Dog Action Welfare Group. Just before Christmas they had to close. They couldn't take any more dogs. They had over 70 dogs in their care, and 30 of those were hunting dogs. So, I mean, is the Hunting Association really taking responsibility for their own dogs, as well as for the fact of what they're doing with fox hunting? And I suppose the last thing I would say, I mean, if just beggars believe that fox hunting is a throwback, a relic from our colonial past, when we were oppressed by a colonial power, the same colonial power has banned fox hunting, and yet we still see it as a worthwhile practice in rural Ireland. Thank you.
I believe that anybody who breaks the law should face the rigours of the law. And our law, interestingly enough, our 2013 legislation, is considered to be best practice. And in fact, you make reference to another jurisdiction that has travelled a different road. In fact, they are looking at our legislation, because the current minister there made reference to his proposal to update their own legislation, which I believe was the same legislation that existed here prior to our 2013 legislation, went back prior to the foundation of the state. So ours is considered to be fit for purpose and best practice, albeit, and we wouldn't agree on this, the carve-outs that have been made in respect of coursing and fishing and hunting. But you make reference to people breaching the welfare regulations in respect of breeding bitches and kennels. Anybody that does that will find no comfort if they're in breach of the regulations, and they should be reported, and there should be action taken. Now, the responsibility for that legislation, as I understand it, doesn't rest with my department. It rests with local authorities and with Decay. But I think those issues should be brought to the attention of the relevant local authorities and action taken if they're found to be in breach.